Greetings to you all, comrades. For those of you us in this session, reverential greetings to you all. To those who will be watching this recording, greetings to you all as well. Thank you for joining Sister Uma. Thank you for joining us, Sister Portia. Thank you for joining Brother Coco, Brother Ifo, and of course, Chair Kwame. Thank you very much for joining us today. Today, we'll be looking at unified legal systems across the continent. But before we delve deep into that, we'll allow Sister Portia to give us geopolitical analysis a bit for the next 10 to 15 minutes. Then we can go straight to our presentation today. So if you wish to speak on this topic, just let me know in the chat. If you wish to have maybe a 10 minutes or 5 minutes presentation, let me know in the chat. And after the presentation, that's after the geopolitical analysis straight, we'll go to a presentation. I believe Brother Kwame has a presentation, or I'll also do something brief on this, or any other member has a presentation. Then we go to question and answer, and then we have an open conversation. So that's the flow of our conversation today. So we are going straight into this. Sister Portia, greetings to you, and yes, please take over.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Greetings. I'll have my camera on, just trying these days going forward to have my camera on when I'm talking to you, and then of course when I'm not talking, I can turn off my camera when I'm not giving presentations, that is. So this week, for the 10 minutes I want to talk, I've been trying to see what is the most productive way to share a geopolitical analysis that's substantive and that contributes or links to the very core of what Consciism Study Group is about, as well as the Kwame Nkrumah Trust. And I think where I erred before is that I'm trying to share a whole bunch of information in a concise amount of time, and then as a result, it's bits and pieces. So I'm going to do something different today. I'm going to look at one particular topic that stands out, and I will always encourage you from a recommendation that King Brother Pigeon mentioned, though I do have some disagreements with the publication because of the funding sources. I still say it's okay if you, should you choose to go look at the Continent magazine. Again, my cause for concern anytime I'm looking at information is I'm always wondering who is funding it and why are they telling me this information. So I prefer to get information from the grassroots or African-led progressive newspapers. So in that regard, I want to go to now the main point. And the main point is about something I've been following for some years now, is the increasing number of women and black women and girls who go missing or who are murdered. And there is going to be a conference this month. I have written to them to see if that there can be a participation in virtually at no cost. And the name of that conference, and it'll be October 15th to 16th, 2026. It'll be at the University of Missouri, and it's titled Missing and Murdered, a Transdisciplinary Conference on Black Women and Girls in Missouri and Beyond. And so the contention from the evidence that I'm seeing is that it is not just in one area of the world. Even though the information that I'm going to give you today is coming from arguably United States of America, and then also the North American region, and then the Caribbean region. There is evidence to suggest that this is globally happening. And when I say globally, meaning that it is a pandemic. So with that being said, the name of this conference, as I said, is Missing and Murdered, a Transdisciplinary Conference on Black Women and Girls in Missouri and Beyond, and it'll be October 2026. And they are looking to this point. That being said, just last week, I heard of a case, and let me mention her name, Brenda Marilyn McLean, who has went missing. I saw a post, and the post said that she had been found, but all of the evidence that I'm seeing still is saying that she has not been found, and she's 76 of age. So the idea of a person being older, which of course in traditional Akibulan or traditional African ways, the concept of harming elders or children was very far removed. And in this instance, this is a 76-year-old person who has gone missing, and she is reported missing in the Gambia. Now, the Gambia has had more than a number of cases concerning Black women where they have been missing or murdered. So I say all of this to say that it goes back to the point of the conference and goes back to the evidence that I'm seeing that this is a pandemic happening with Black women and girls. For example, when you look, and I'll start with the Caribbean point, which was out of 28th March 2025 from BBC, and it was saying that there is mysterious disappearances. This is the title: spook residents of the Caribbean island. Now, again, the source is BBC. I have my criticisms of the BBC as well, but basically, there are reports that a 74-year-old woman just disappeared, and it is happening more and more of these recent years, and I would say within the 5 years I'm seeing this. So that is happening in the Caribbean. We also have cases that are happening in Africa. And then what came out this year was saying that basically there is the percentage of Black women and girls in the United States when you look at 2023 data. So of those 500, more than 500,000, so around 563,389 persons reported missing in 2023. When you look at persons of color, they're saying that 40% of those cases are persons of color, and then they're saying that African Americans make up in the United States of America only 13% of the population. So there is a concern because in the United States of America, for example, there's less of a population of Black women, and then at the same time of that less population of those Black women, the numbers of Black women who are gone missing is more. So what a psychological Psychology Today article said by an author, Brianna A. Baker, doctor. They're saying that there's psychological biases that shape how society responds to missing children. And then, and the key points were that Black children account for about 37%. And this is March 2026 article. Black children account for about 37% of missing cases, but receive far less media coverage. And even when I was looking at LinkedIn, also irrelevant to this, there is a person who said there have been a number of Black women, girls who have gone missing in England. So back to this point where this author, Dr. Baker, says is that there's an adultification bias that causes Black girls to be perceived, as older and less innocent. And then in the psychological research, it shows empathy is often stronger for perceived in-group members. So there is a psychological component to this. There is that has been referenced, the adultification. I have seen that firsthand when you talk about darker skin Black girls. They are the ones who are most readily told that they are trouble, that they are causing disruption, but lighter skinned persons that are said to be closer to whiteness, they are the good ones. They're so nice. And so this can even be, and unfortunately, there is you can see the connection, unfortunately, between the systems that we're in, because those systems detest Blackness. So we have a situation, as I've been saying for a long time, and I will continue to say, and when I get information about that conference, I would encourage us to attend because it's so relevant to our work. Well, we have a case, a credible case, or cases of our young people and older people who are going missing. And like with the Caribbean case, they were saying that, or there's been alleged that it's related to organ donors. And when you go back again, I talked about this last week, when you go back and how they have lynched Black people, the organs are considered their property, the oppressors. All in all, what I'm trying to say, this is of concern, and from a analysis, not an opinion, to the Conscientious Study Group, to the Kwame Nkrumah Trust, because it is a situation globally where a sizable group of our loved ones are going missing and being murdered based on biases that are in racial capitalist systems. So I'll close it there and I'll open it up for questions. And now I'll turn off my camera. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Toshi, for that. This is a very critical issue that we need to look at. It's happened even in the continent. Sometimes back in Kenya here, we're complaining about abduction. Sometimes back it went to women being found killed in Airbnbs. Sometimes it went back to children either disappearing, even recently, children missing. So as much as it's also happened out there, but it's also happened internally in the continent. So I think those are very important things. Anybody who want to come back on this or raise any concern regarding to this that proportion just reported to us, send unmute yourself and go ahead. If no, I'll go to Brother Kwame. Okay, I don't see any hand up.
Brother
Kwame.
Yeah, Brother Pigeon, thank you for your comments. And Sister Portia, thank you for bringing our attention to abductions and identification of Black girls. So in addition to what you've just shared with us, there are many aspects of neocolonialism that Africa is suffering. Apart from what the things you've mentioned, the question for me, as always, is, which is a point of the geopolitical analysis, is to ask ourselves, what does this tell us about where Africa is going in terms of our unification? Because it is our position, my position, or the position of the Pan-African movement, that the reason all these things are happening to us is that Africa is not where it should be. That a united Africa, a continental government that plays its role, or that should play its role, can ask questions. And when it asks questions, it can demand answers, you see. And not only that, it can mobilize continental resources, on a united front to deal with issues. So if these women or girls within the African continent are, for example, being abducted by organized agencies a continental government, can deal with it on that level, because people can move between jurisdictions, and we have different laws in different jurisdictions. You see, this South African issue, for instance, about drugs and how Nigerians are responsible for the drug dens in Nigeria. And the question people are asking is how are the drugs being brought into the country? Who is behind the drugs in South Africa? And the same issue arises, which is that if we had a continental government, that can mobilize the resources, then it can deal with it. So the whole point of our Saturday sessions, again, when we started it, is the fact that the neo-colonial territories are only interested in their internal neo-colonial affairs, and a lot of Africans, including the people on the left, are preoccupied with neo-colonial citizenship, that they forget the most important issue that is on the table, which is the unification of the continent. So when we are looking at every issue, the fundamental focus should be, how does this advance our unification? But if we want to take issues that affect us, there are hundreds of them. So that is again my question. So these girls and missing girls and missing Black girls and so on. Okay, so what does that tell us about Africa's unification? Is it advancing our unification? Is it bringing it back? Or is it a symptom of our misunification? Yeah. So those are the issues. So
Brother Kwame, may I answer the question?
Yeah, you can. Why not?
And then I'll close up, because as you said, we're starting late. I suggest, Brother Kwame, we add another question to your question. Yes, that's the guiding question. Is this going towards our unification and liberation, or is it not going? I think that I said it before, that's a critical question. That question is, I also said, with racial capitalism not even frameworks, but tentacles, it will always be not going towards that. So an additional question is your action, which you suggest. So how I see geopolitical analysis is, there is an issue that I am trying to give in 10 minutes time a readiness of why it's an issue and how is it of concern to the Kwame Nkrumah Trust and Conscientism Study Group. So this is a concern if there are a sizable number of our populations going missing. That is definitely not going to help us get unification. So a question then is, what do we do, which you always encourage, what do we do about the issue? Because it's nothing productive just to say it. And so my suggestion always is, as I have said before, when there is an issue, we should have an active presence as the Kwame Nkrumah Trust, writing to the necessary persons and working with our partnerships to have this issue engaged. And I don't think it's only limited to the currency in these current systems. Now, that goes back to volunteering, meaning that who will do that? Because right now, the Kwame Nkrumah Trust doesn't have a media officer. That has been vacant, at least since I've been part of this. So there was a press release that we did when the whole situation with the Kenya situation came out, where there were protests. I don't know what happened to that press release. So all I'm saying is there's stuff we can do that is active and taking some type of strategic action when we see that just last week, a sister, a comrade has went missing in the Gambia. That is of concern. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. I think what you're raising is very important, Brother Kwame, for them. And I don't want us to open the discussion on this a bit, but when other people, especially the skin color, whether you call them white, traffic our women and our daughters, it can appear within that so-called racial capitalism. But Nkrumah talk of capitalism both external and internal. It means even internally, and as I've given example of women and children also disappearing within the country, some even perpetuated by the government, and some can be the individual with the ulterior motive. I remember one of my friends said that the members of parliament who are engaged in trafficking young daughters or children in Africa, especially Kenya, to sell them to China. Sell them to China on those sex commercial ventures. And that he had some data on them. But these are members of parliament. The bottom line is that they don't do it for free, it's for economic. So it's exploitation. And not only exploitation, it's the dehumanization of capital. And I think we're talking about inhuman and human the term, where somebody sees another person as a trade good and item. So I think as we approach it on the external approach and what happens between other races being the same, in terms of skin color, not just that they're different races, but internally there are also other people who do the same. Some by government, or maybe silencing opposing views, but some by also syndicate groups. Whoever does the same thing, the issue is what's done is not right. And I think as you're saying, yes, in terms of unification, how do we unite if we send each other, especially in the continental level? How do we unite even at the bigger continental government if the people of Africa internally still sell their brothers and sisters, or even murder their brothers and sisters in the so-called monetary gain or any ritualistic or anything you want to call it? So that is a negative, what you call a negative action that then takes us away from our unification. But the bigger thing is, as Sister Posh is also saying, how do we say enough? I'm looking at the statistics, over thousands of people are being tapped out of the continent daily. So I think it's a big issue that you still need either to have a session on it, probably a presentation on a Saturday. We present, we get the data, statistics, and agree on what can we do on this subject, because there are a lot of funds or a lot of people are responsible for it, whether government, individuals, family members, or any other of such level. So I think it is okay. Maybe we need to think about when we can tie this conversation into a Saturday conversation with any of the topics we are having in our list. Sister Amma, I'll allow you to come in then. Brother Kwame, please, if you have a presentation, be ready. Amma?
Yes, thank you, and good evening to everyone. I think your suggestion that there's a deeper look into this is a good one, because there are a lot of nuances. So, for instance, some of the women who have gone missing in the Gambia specifically are African women who have migrated back from the West. So I think the woman who's in her 70s who you've referred to, Sister Portia, is from, I think she's from Trinidad. There was an African woman from Britain who went missing and ended up being killed. There was also in Ghana, and so there will be underlying things, but there are different reasons, because some of these women, in particular in the Gambia, and Ghana, maybe elsewhere in Africa, they are being killed by fellow Africans. So the woman who was from Britain who was killed was from an African, and it appears it's to do with finances and resources, etc., getting access to. You got a significant number of women who are migrating by themselves back to Africa are older, 50s, 60s, even 70s single women. Then you have another nuance is and you mentioned it. I watched a documentary maybe about 2 months ago about women from Kenya, in fact, being tricked into going to the area of the world we call the Middle East, and basically being used as sex slaves. And a number of them end up being killed. Allegedly, they've committed suicide, but a number of them end up being killed. Then you've got those who go missing within the Western nations. Some of those are going missing because they are being abducted by non-Africans. But again, there are some issues around Africans. So, for instance, and in this case, actually, it was a young man. So there's a class aspect to this. So wealthy Africans seeking and abducting African children, and actually, when it's African children, it's both men and women, to do a whole range of things, including organs. So there was a recent case in Britain where I think it's a Nigerian senator, if I remember, and his wife, who are currently in jail because they tricked a young man from Nigeria to come in to, I think it was kidneys, to basically use his kidneys for their daughter who because she was on dialysis. So it's actually quite a complex issue to look at, and what we have to examine are some of the rationales behind it. So the whole migration issue linked to the dangers for women. So those African women who are in the hope of a better life being tricked into migrating to the West in search of a job and better life and employment, etc., etc. There are those African women who are migrating back to Africa because they want to connect with their ancestral home. So let's have a discussion about it, but let's look at it within all its complexities, including the role that some of our people are playing in some of the issues and disappearances and maltreatment of our women. And one of the things Nkrumah always talks to us about in terms of unity is tackling not just the issue around class, but also the issue around gender and how we as African peoples need to ensure that our women are not being exploited and oppressed because of their gender, which means that we need to look at aspects of that within our African communities. I'll end there.
Thank you, Sister Anna. Brother Kwame, please come in. And probably I know some of the legal framework might help us solve this, but please, Brother Kwame, I'll allow you to come in, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Hello, is it just me or is Brother Kwame?
We can't hear you.
Yeah.
In case you're speaking, please.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, can you see my screen now? My apologies. Is my screen clear, brothers and sisters?
Yes, I can see your screen. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, the title should be the unified legal system which is our topic for today. The reason the title is saying reclaiming the level 2 supranational space is because that is the space that is missing. That is a space occupied currently by 55 useless neocolonial states who are not interested in the life and happiness of Africans. States that have been set up going as far back as Berlin as instruments of exploitation and oppression. What Staposha reminds us as racist capitalism, but which we also call neocolonial states. So we have many, many problems, and we can discuss them till the cows come home. And the central issue for us is, what do we do about it? Again, there are 101 things that can be done. Issues can be tackled from different angles, at different layers, at different levels, different agencies. We are civil society. There's also so much we can do. We also have limited resources. We are not like the state, at least with considerable resources that can act on behalf of our people. So that's why the title is like that. The Hegelian doctrine is the idea that they think they own us. So if you take all these issues, why are women getting missing? Why are our girls not in school? Why are our boys not in school? Why are our children not being properly fed? Why are all our children not living in good and adequate and livable homes? All these issues, are issues that the neocolonial state is not really interested in, because its purpose has always been the same. How much can they take out of us? How much can they steal? How much can they extract? How much can they send into transnational institutions, etc., etc., etc.? And that's a Hegelian doctrine, which is the idea that the state is a sovereign owner. These states are recent creations. Of course, they changed their nature in terms of who was indirect or direct controlling them, from impositions earlier to we actively adopting them as instruments of our will, mostly in subordination to foreign interests. But the state thinks that it owns us and can do whatever it likes with us. That's a Hegelian doctrine. What we are saying is that it has to move from that Hegelian doctrinal position to the public trust doctrinal position, where the state is the custodian for us. We are the indigenous and the organic nations of the continent. We were here. We've always been here. We are taken for granted. We are disrespected. Nobody asks for our views on anything. And in most cases, we don't even know our own power. We have nations that have been torn apart, existing in 4 or 5 different neocolonial states. And yet, these nations are doing nothing. They can see that they are in different jaws of different animals of the neocolonial state. And yet the nation itself is not doing anything. My nation is one of them, the Ever Nation. We start from the southeastern part of what is called the neocolonial state of Ghana, all the way to southwestern Nigeria. That whole coastal area is the Ever State, or the Ever Nation. What are we doing? We are torn between Ghana, Togo, Benin, and Nigeria. And yet our leaders, our traditional leaders, some of them are more interested in playing the new colonial game than uniting us. So we are saying that there has to be a move to the state as custodian for us, the indigenous nations and organic nations. We never gave any foreign institutions power to govern us. That is why we took back our own governance when the decolonization movement started in 1957. And slowly we took back the governance of our nations. And the idea was that these states will yield to a united Africa, and yet we've all stalled. People are prouder to be Ghanaians and South Africans and Zimbabweans and so on and so forth than being African citizens. And we still don't have the African nation that we need. I am Christian Agbotsa. I'm the director of the Kwame Nkrumah Trust. I'm presenting to you on a united legal system for Africa. And our argument is that a united Africa is where AU organs of the African Union serve indigenous nations, replacing the Hegelian doctrine with the public trust doctrine. I'll skip this slide. The current situation in which we find ourselves, there are two main symptoms of the legal position on the continent. There's legal fragmentation, 50+ sovereign borders preventing a single economic and legal space. And that has entrenched poverty despite vast resource wealth. And some of the issues we are mentioning in terms of whether people are returning to the continent to settle, retire home, or linking up with their ancestral homes, or leaving the continent to work elsewhere, the disrespect that we face as Black people, all that is linked with this legal fragmentation. And the symptom two is the institutional impotence. The neo-colonial states are not allowing the Pan-African Parliament to come into force. The Pan-African Parliament is meant to be our voice as people, as the owners of the continent. But the current neo-colonial elites in the various neo-colonial states are not letting the Pan-African Parliament work the way it should. And it's been relegated to an advisory role under Article 2 of the Pan-African Parliament Protocol. And it is a mechanism for our transformation into a full legislature, but it remains deliberately undermined by this evil, this obnoxious, these debilitating neo-colonial states, these creatures that do not serve our interests. And the point of our Saturdays, brothers and sisters, is to draw attention, because people are too comfortable. So comfortable, as we saw in South Africa, that other Africans were the enemy, instead of seeing the state as a problem that is not letting them live a life in human happiness. Fellow Africans became the problem, or are the target, the enemy, the reason why Africa is not where it should be. And what did the neo-colonial state do? It folded its arms and was just looking, whilst its agents accompanied lawless men and women to go around shooting, killing, maiming, abducting, shaming, stealing resources. The new colonial state is responsible. From Cape to Cairo, the new colonial state is a problem. Morocco recently has let about 50 to 60,000 Africans. So I think they're Africans or non-Africans, whoever they are, to move to an island on the tip of the African continent called, I think, Quetta, which belongs to Spain. Why? For reasons to do with Spain's refusal to grant its bases as launch pads for America's illegal war. Anything America wants, America must get, like a spoiled child that must perpetually seeking attention. A vagabond that must always, as a child, because he's screaming, must get what it wants. Under institutional impotence. The point I'm making there again is the neo-colonial state again. That is the problem. That's the point I'm making. Then we have the African peer review mechanism, mired in heavy bureaucracy. And this legal fragmentation, Brother Pidgin, let me know when my time is up, because I can continue speaking, yeah? But let me know when my time is up. This African peer review mechanism, it's like everything else. The AU brings in a mandate, a policy, whatever it is, and only some African countries will accede to it. The rest are not interested. I don't know of any AU policies that the AU has said African countries should put into law, that all of them have done so. No, they're either dragging their feet, and so on and so forth. So even the APRM is not working. Anyway, the AU has 5 levers, again, based on the way I have approached this African issue again and again. The AU has 5 levers that, in terms of the law, that can be applied to bring a unified legal system across the continent. The first is uniform acts. And here the idea is that the acts are uniform across the whole continent and directly applicable, and they are binding transnational laws. Then the second lever is what they call normative supranationality, which is a standard setting authority resting above the individual state. So the AU has that as a tool. The third tool the AU has is the right of intervention, which is Article 4H, as I understand it, of the Constitutive Act, which mandates intervention for war crimes, genocide, and constitutional changes. As you can see, if the citizens of one country are chasing other citizens and killing them and murdering them and stealing them and destroying their shops and stealing from their shops and so on, so somehow the AU cannot intervene. And even when the AU intervenes, it does not have a police force. It does not have an army. So it's like a toothless bulldog, as some people say. Have right of intervention, but can't do anything. But the only time it can act is if there are war crimes, genocide, and unconstitutional changes. But when there was genocide in Rwanda, which African countries came together and intervened? Somebody remind me. Did Africa as the AU, as an institution. What did they do? Did they put together an army and intervene directly in Rwanda when the genocide was taking place? We have to ask, because that is one of the levers they have. Then there is lever 4, which is popular participation. It's one of the, which is meant to bring again a unified legal system, that all leaders are elected. But we have some who are monarchs. They don't want to be elected. They say they are heads of state and they are kings so and so. They are kings so and so. But the AU is meant to, we are meant to have a unified legal system. Will mean that all our leaders are elected. If we don't want an elected head of state, then that is something we have to bring in as the nations. And then we have level 5, which is judicial supranationality. And this is where we have binding and enforceable decisions from continental courts. Do we have courts that can make decisions that are binding on an arrogant neo-colonial state? Huh? Do you think that a president who has been in office for 38 years will just take a decision from a continental court because he says so and so? Brothers and sisters, this is the situation in which we are. We have an AU. We criticize the AU. We had a session, remember I say this, where a brother came and presented to us that the AU is useless, it should be abolished. But he never mentioned that the AU has these instruments that at least we as civil society can begin to use. We say we are hungry, that our mother is not cooking anything for us to eat. Our mother doesn't care, even though she's there. But even the food that our mother has cooked and put in the fridge, we are not even eating the food. Even that food she's cooked, we are not touching it. And yet we are in the streets screaming and telling people our mother is wicked, our mother doesn't care, our mother is so and so. Yes.
I'll give you 5 more minutes, please.
How many?
5 more minutes. If you need 10 maximum there.
Yeah. Thank you. So these are the levers which the AU has. But they are obstructed by state sovereignty. The states, the 55 states are the obstacle, because they are those obstructing all these 5 levers of the AU. I am very sure the AU is very pleased if it could get civil society members that could rally and help it and say that it has instruments that can be helpful to the entire continent. I'm not sure the AU has civil society members, apart from its own groupings that I'm not sure what they actually do. You know, I'm talking about civil society outside the AU itself. So this is my audit finding. When I look at the levers in terms of changing anything, there's a fatal mismatch between the AU's mandate to integrate and its complete lack of operational jurisdiction. The concept of state sovereignty is actively weaponized by neo-colonial states to obstruct the 5 levers. And because the AU has a 0 operational jurisdiction and its mandate of non-interference, etc., and because of the neo-colonial state sovereignty, the result is that the Article 4H right to intervene remains entirely discretionary and unenforced, hence protecting ruling elites rather than the citizens of Africa. As I'm speaking to you, I can't vote in my own country. I can vote in England where I live, but the neo-colonial state in which I was born, I can't vote because I live here. Yeah, the law has said I can vote, but the neo-colonial elites are not interested in operationalizing the law so that we here, we Ghanaians in the diaspora, can vote. They just don't care about us. They just don't care. They just don't care. The neo-colonial state doesn't care about us. the quicker we understand this, I think the better for us. I think what we need is the campaign against the neo-colonial states, because they just don't care about us. So what we have currently at the AU level, because we civil society are not doing much, the states themselves are not doing much. So what happens? Workshops, indices and reports, stage 2. They make recommendations, stage 3. They are ignored. Nobody cares. You, the citizens that they are making them for, you don't care yourself. As for the states, they couldn't care less anyway. So nobody cares. It's all ignored. People are saying they should be abolished. They are useless. And so then they have more workshops, and then more and more workshops to report. That's what is happening. Decades of peer reviews, declarations, and diplomatic summits have yielded an alpha coefficient of 0. Nothing has changed in terms of unifying the continent on the legal front. Progress has become an illusion. The states act as the owners of the integration process. Can you imagine? Intentionally designing it to fail in order to preserve their own domestic power. Even we, the nations that are in the neo-colonial states, that are locked within the neo-colonial states, some of us even have been oppressed and suppressed. The state has been captured by sometimes one nationality or one tribe, as we may say, or a coalition of tribes. And you can see that mostly in Nigeria, where they rotate the presidency amongst themselves. The people can go to where they don't care. So the coefficient, the alpha, as you can see, is 0 on my slide. 0 effectiveness. So what are the next steps? Well, I have the next step, but I want to give you the time. I want to give you 3 case files. The first is the Michael Campbell case. I don't know if you all remember this. This is where they took the Zimbabwean government to court, to the SADC tribunal. Yeah, the SADC tribunal was a regional court. And the Campbell company took the Zimbabwean government to court. And the court ruled against Zimbabwe regarding human rights and property seizures. Yeah, but the Zimbabwean government said they will not recognize the court. Yeah, in other words, the AU was trying to use the lever 5, which is the ability of a regional court to bind a member state. Zimbabwe refused. So rather than enforcing compliance, what did they do? The collective heads of state responded by suspending and entirely disbanding the tribunal. Can you imagine? They don't like the court, so they disband it. Just like Trump, something like Trump would do. Our leaders are also doing it, brothers and sisters. Trump is not the only boogeyman on the continent, on the globe. They're all at it. What is neo-colonial state protected itself at the expense of the supranational legal order? The second case is Ghana. It was the Republic of Ghana versus the Attorney General. Is the Attorney General? No, she was the Supreme Court Justice. She was head of the judiciary. She's the top civil servant of the judiciary. She was called Gertrude Tokono. She was sacked by this current government. She took the government to court as an individual. Remember, the Zimbabwe case is where a legal person, takes the state itself to court. And the state, what did they do? They disband the court because they don't like what it said. In the Tokono case, the case went to the ECOWAS court, which is meant to have jurisdiction over the supreme courts of the neo-colonial states in West Africa. So that is lever 2, the expectation of baseline constitutional order, domestic checks and balances. What happened? Your guess is as good as mine. The state did nothing wrong. Yeah, her human rights were not were not violated. Remember, she's even a woman. So even that makes it worse, because as women, our women, are even less respected, as Sister Portia brought to our attention at the beginning of this session. Acts of incompetence, misbehavior, were politically weaponized, so they said, against her. So domestic regional checks failed when the executive holds absolute control over the state apparatus. What they want, they have to get. So that's my case 2. Case 3 is the OHADA success story. So this is the Organization for Harmonization of Business Law in Africa, which is established a single economic space for investors across the franc zone. The problem with this success story is that it's only limited to the French post-colonial, neo-colonial territories. Although it's working in the sense that whatever the court says abides, all other all of the, I think, 15 or 17 francophone countries have to obey. So there's this example that a court can make a decision and the other states will obey whether they like it or not, and it's working with OHADA, which stands for the Organization for the Harmonization of Business Law in Africa. The Anglophone countries haven't joined because they are former French colonies, like former English colonies, and these are French colonies, former French colonies. So the English ones are not interested. Member states expressly relinquish. So the success here is that the member states relinquish specific sovereignty. And under Article 5 of the treaty, the 9 Uniform Acts are directly applicable, and the Common Court of Justice and Arbitration, CCJA, operates as a true supernatural legal entity above all their national courts. So it can be done. But it has to come, we, the people. We, the people, have to act. And those are the 3 case files that I'm sharing with you. The core diagnosis, brothers and sisters, is the level 2 gap, the vacuum. The African Union fails because an institutional vacuum exists at the neo-colonial state level. So I'll come back to what I said to you at the beginning. We the people, we the indigenous and organic nations of Africa, we have rights of indigenous nations. And those rights cannot be trampled upon. They cannot be superseded by any neo-colonial institution. Our rights precedes that of all the neo-colonial states. Because because of our pre-existing nationhood, we hold what we call sui generis rights that predate and supersede the artificially constructed neo-colonial state. And so what we should be asking for is that there should be a custodial shift under the public trust doctrine, that our natural resources and sovereign authority are held in trust for us. They don't belong to the neo-colonial state. The state is not supreme. The state is not sovereign. We, the people, we are the sovereign, the sovereign. It is we who are the sovereign. The state cannot be sovereign. The state is merely a custodian with a fiduciary duty, not an absolute owner under the Hegelian doctrine. So we are asking for a constitutional conference. I think Brother PG mentioned this the last time when we looked at this topic. We must, brothers and sisters, we must call a constitutional conference where we can reclaim the vacuum that the neo-colonial state will never fill. The nations today can fill that role. So we must convene a constitutional conference of organic indigenous nations to impose our collective will on the neo-colonial states, and it can be done. Don't be afraid. Some of you are too afraid. The secrets of life is to have no fear. Nkrumah told us that. Some of us are too afraid. We are always afraid for all kinds of reasons. And the outcome, hopefully, will be we establish a true Pan-African parliament with binding legislative powers and legally enforce the public trust doctrine across the continent. If they refuse, we will call them to our national gatherings. They dare not say they will not come. Because when the traditional authority calls you to order, you have to obey. That's whether you are the president or not, doesn't matter. Take Ghana, for example. If Marshall Palace calls you, the son of the soil, to a meeting in Marshall Palace, you can't say you will not come. Who are you to say you will not come? Who do you think you are? When a nation that you came out of is calling you to order, they will listen. We need to bring them to order, brothers and sisters. So I suppose that is my way forward for us. Brother PJ, I think I should stop here. That we must call a constitutional conference. That should be our strategy.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. I allowed, of course, that earlier for you to finish this address because we started with it. I'll allow you to come in. I'll just give 5 minutes ad, and then I don't think there are many, so I'll allow each member to do a contribution before we end this session. Thank you, Brother Kwame, so much in looking at this. I like how sometimes you try to look at the AU. As much as some of us believe it's a toothless bulldog, we believe it's useless institution for some time. It can be useful, as you have said, if right people are there and do right things. And maybe if some of us also push it to where it's supposed to be, I believe maybe something can happen. But sometimes back, I embarked on, when we were preparing the Constitutional Conference, I embarked on the process of downloading and checking constitutions of Africa. I think in one of our files, we have all 54 states constitutions, current constitution, all of them, from their first chapter to the second chapter. And I've looked at somehow just subjecting in small analysis. The key question that we must ask ourselves currently is what is called legal system. You remember the Kwame we have, Brother Kwame, that Nkrumah is saying that now we are a continent that now has exposed itself to both Indo-Euro-Christian and Islamic appearance or interaction with African heritage. Now, you ask yourself, I think what Nkrumah pushed in the conscience is that we cannot be too defensive to say that we need a traditional African constitution. We must be alive to the fact that we have also been exposed to all these triplets or triple heritage things. Now, how do you fuse that? And I think Nkrumah then says that a state should be secular. And even the united continent of Africa we want, that unified government, should be a secular government. And Nkrumah draws the reasons for that. When Nkrumah talks about a secular, he had a reason for that. But having looked at a bit in terms of the similarity in most of this constitution, you realize that one, the Anglophone countries, which are around 21 of them, rely heavily on the judicial precedents advisory by the court processes. The Francophones and Lusophones, also the continent, who are around 26 states in the continent, codify civil codes inspired by the French Napoleonic codes and the Portuguese frameworks. There is also the customary and religious pluralism in most of the constitutions. So the Islamic legal system exists in some of the North African countries, you see. There are also some countries like Kenya who also maybe recognize, and in fact, over 40 constitutions in Africa recognize customary law, especially on land tenure, chieftaincy, personal law, operating along the formal statutory procedure. So there are around 40 constitutions in the continent that then recognize it. But if you look at then, let me just share this briefly, because I want to do it very briefly as possible. If you look at the other part of the bigger similarity, you realize that in terms of then the presidency, the executive power, you realize that these countries, most of them, 54 of them, they have a semi-president with a strong prime minister role across. So executive head by the president, with ceremonial also power attached to the military element. The Bill of Rights, of course, is very explicit in fundamental rights, of course, inspired by the African Human Charter, and they are listed in most of constitution. There are also customary protections, but the implementation is an issue. There's also supranational treaty status, so dualist treaties that require parliamentary ratification, some harmonist treaties that automatically supersede national laws. If you look at maybe the judicial review bodies, there are Supreme Courts with constitutional jurisdiction. So there are some similarities around. The fundamental human rights, of course, 54 constitutions guarantee fundamental human rights. If you look there, equal before the law, which is never the case, and discriminations, which sometimes there are too much discrimination. They also triplet governance, universal adherence to the structures of the doctrine of separation of power. Remember, we talked about it also in the conscience in a bit, when you looked at people like Locke and Stuart Mill and those other philosophers. Then there's also Pan-African commitment. Over 35 Constitution explicitly refers to the Pan-African unity, African Union principle, or regional integration in their preambles and directives. So these are what you see across. There are few divergences in those constitutions, like, for example, executive term limits. There are also citizenship and free movement. Others guarantee dual citizenships. Others have restriction on that in various constitutions. There's a land tenure and property. Some give state ownership on land versus private ownership. Some also have communal freehold lands, and others have differences. Because I remember, like in Sudan, I was South Sudan, there's no individual that have a land. So if you go in South Sudan and you want to buy land from anybody, there's nobody who can guarantee you to give you land directly, like to deal with them in private level. The land is for the community, so either you go to the chief and only lease the land. There is also monism and dualism, inconsistency applicability of AU treaties that create legal barriers across the continent. But what I was interested in harmonization, how do we harmonize this? Because the key issue is when you want to have a legal system that is unified, it means you have to harmonize them. So property rights, capital movement, and business laws, those are things that need to be harmonized in terms of the trade. In governance, things to do with the presidential term limit, electoral integrity, constitutional amendment, also need to be harmonized. In the supranational supremacy, treating incorporating clauses, granting binding authority to African Union courts, because we need to move now to the continental level. So these also need to be harmonized. I was trying just to imagine now, if we were then to come up with a preamble of this constitution, how would it look like? So of course, key issue is that that constitution must be based on the Pan-African heritage, the sovereignty of the African people, and the commitment to the total political and economic integration. Because that is the basis of what you're calling the unified African continent. We need a total political and economic integration into United Nations of African government. So there are a few things that they need to be done. We need to actually harmonize everything here so that we have a strict division of power, defense, monetary policy, continental trade at the union level. So you don't need this so-called colonial state. We need them at union level. So many colonial states, then, if either they move to whatever they want to move to, is okay, but we need them at a union level. The human rights, we need them to be enforced directly from the national level, because there is no way somebody is abducted in Uganda like Kizza Besigye, and in Kenya it's not maybe abducted, or somebody is abducted in Kenya and then it's sent back to their so-called country. That cannot be allowed if you have to have a unified system. So you need to harmonize all protocols, especially as Brother Kwame say, all the rights protocols. We need to ensure that national parliaments are first of all standardized together so that they act as just a branches. And as we are saying, ours is to move them into nationality. So the parliaments of the continent, if they have to still exist, they'll have to exist as a houses of representatives of nationalities, not so-called MPs that represent just a territorial thing. Then also the judiciary, we need to move up so that a crime in Ghana or any part of the continent cannot be a crime in one side and not crime in the other side. We need to have that crime in the African Judicial Court. So sometimes now you see, when you have issues in the continent, where do we run to? We want to go to the ICC, which they created. So we need to empower a judicial arm in the continental level, in our constitutions. We need to ratify so many of these of federal constitutions so that we actually have one United Nations of African constitution. So those are a few things that can be done. But if you look at it, there are few distribution of legal traditions. There are civil law traditions around 40% in the continent. There are common laws, family laws, there are mixed hybrid systems, and the religious customary systems. So basically, these were the few things I was trying to look at, that if we have actually to have a continental government, if you have to have free movement of people, if you have to do away with all these so-called discrimination, xenophobia, whatever, migration or legal migrant, that can only be possible if you have a unified, harmonized legal system. So that's what I needed to just add on, Brother Kwame. And apologies for also taking me a bit long on this. I don't know, I'm the chair, of course, I believe so. So I'll allow other members to come in, then I'll get back to Brother Kwame to give his final remark. Sister Portia, see your hand is up, please. Sister Portia. Then the next person who want to contribute, let your hand be up. I'll take their hands up first, and then I'll go to other members so that everybody speaks, then we come back to the comment. Sister Portia.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me just turn on my camera. Yeah, okay, so I just Googled when did that Catholic Church where they tried to justify chattel enslavement, when did that happen? That was 1452. So we know that this whole system began from the 15th century to present. So if we just take that year, that's 574 years of racial capitalist systems. And we know that in traditional Akibulan ways or communities, they existed thousands of years before that, before the 15th century, with systems that are working. So I always want to just start there to remind us that, again, that's how insidious these systems are, that in 574 years, it has totally tried to discombobulate a people where they have no unification. They have no principles. This is the intent, the calculation. And to even think that we're not winning in racial capitalist systems when it's obviously you won't win in racial capitalist systems. So we had systems thousands of years in place, that's documented, that were working, where we were getting along, where we were traveling, where we were having speaking multiple languages, where we were talking about how we could be better engagement with different parts of the world. So all of that was happening before the 15th century. And then the 15th century comes to date, to up to the point of artificial intelligence now being used alleged in some academic opinions to harm societies. This is 574 years of those systems. Then the second point is what Brother Kwame said, and I have been screaming. If anyone saw my United Nations Permanent Forum on People of African Speech to them this year, I have been screaming what Brother Kwame has been said, which is, I asked him, how can the largest United Nations body on people of African descent be the most financially insecure? That's supposed to be the body where all of the people of African descent can come to, yet it's the most financially insecure. The same question here. How can it be 2026 where we are still saying the same stuff? And I think, to push back on us gently, I think we've had enough talking. Brother Kwame has shown us the plans are there. I myself and other comrades have been saying this. So we don't need another study. We don't need another conference, even though I did suggest that conference about the Black women saying we should attend. I'm talking about a conference where we keep regurgitating the same stuff we don't know. So now to the third point is the Kwame Nkrumah Trust, I think, is at a real unique place in its existence. And before I go into what I'm suggesting, and I know it's us together who will decide the way forward, I want to go back to what happened when we had decided to vie for this African diaspora seat. We were trying to compete for it, to register and then apply. I can tell you there were less than 10 people who attended those meetings from May to July. Now, we did have the consultative discussions, There were people who said they couldn't participate. They did reach out to me and say that, but by and large, there were less than 10 people on that call within our networks of thousands of people. What is it, the lead coordinator? I'll take that. I'll put the onus on me that it was the lead coordinator and not being able to mobilize people. And then I'll also put it back on us in saying that we have had leaders, not who are me, who still haven't been able to mobilize people. So this is why I say I think we have enough talking. How are we going to mobilize the number of people that we need to address the suggestions that Brother Kwame is saying? Because we are not showing up. We say we're going to show up, but we are not showing up. Is it because we're exhausted? Is it because we think that maybe just coming to these meetings every week is what we can do? So now to the third point where I said, I think the Kwame Nkrumah Trust is at an interesting place to re-say it in its existence. I do not suggest we have more conferences, more discussions. I do suggest that we build from what Brother Kwame has done to have an implementation plan that is consensus-based, and then after we have it, we actually do it. Even if that is one thing. I yield.
Thank you, Sister Portia, for that. Who will listen to you and request Brother Stephen to come in. Dr. Phil, are you
Brother
able to
Pidgin, we
come
can't
in?
hear you very well.
No, can you hear me now, please?
But not as sharp as it can be, but yeah, but we can hear you.
Okay, I'll request Brother Stephen to please come in after Sister Portia. Brother Stephen?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. Yeah, I was thinking and I was listening to the presentation about African Union and all this stuff. And if you realize that most of our presentations are things that we know already are happening, and the position of the African Union is not something that is new. We know that actually, basically, it's actually sponsored. Actually, African Union, it seems like it serves the West more than it serves Africa. Why? It's because it's actually sponsored by the West. The majority of the money that sponsors African Union comes from the West. And even sometimes in lobbying, some of the ideas within it, actually, there's an external influence that plays out because someone else is paying for that. So one of the things why it's always been called a toothless bulldog is simply because as long as we don't support our own institutions, someone else will do it for us and someone else will control us. So if you realize that most of the problems that we are having, even the solutions that we are given, they are very much far-fetched. They are possible. How we do it, we've got all these big ideas. But the question that we ask is, how are we going to do that? So let me just be very practical. I don't want to give you the how we are going to do it, but I think we are now the Kwame Nkrumah Trust. Of course, we are trying to recreate ourselves. We have already made an application for one of the departments, not as people who makes decision, but possibly as just a branch that consult, which actually gives us also an opportunity of us having a voice, given that we have been nominated to be one of the organizations that they want. We don't know how it's going to be. But the question that I always ask, whenever I sit down, even now we are trying to reconfigure the Kwame Nkrumah Trust so that it becomes more effective as an organization and stuff. We are trying to do that. One thing that I always ask ourselves as we do that, maybe our solutions are far-fetched, our explanations are far beyond us. But what is it that is within the reach of Kwame Nkrumah Trust that we can do at least us? What steps can we take to have an influence? Apart from being an advisory board, because we are more like an advisor, so we don't make rules, we don't have the judicial, what do you call this, we don't have the power, the actual constitutional power to influence the decisions of African Union, because they are always influenced by actually states themselves. But us as organization, we can influence how they think. So I was even thinking that apart from that, the stage that we've made of trying to have a certain influence, though it is peripheral, what is it that we are doing as an institution? As we build ourselves, what are the things that we are going to do that will contribute to the Africa that we want? Okay. And among our programs, among our projects that we have, what are those projects that we have for uniting Africa? And what are the steps that we are going to take ourselves? Because it's time now whereby we can't just say, this is failing, this has happened, this has done this. No, it's a time that we say, what is our responsibility as an institution? What is our responsibility as a trust towards that? I think it's something that we need to answer as we rebuild, reconvene, as we start to reconceptualize Kwame Nkrumah trust itself, to say what is our contributor, so that one day, whenever we are taking stock of what we have done, we're not looking at what others have done or what Africa have failed. We are looking at ourselves as committed Pan-Africanists and what have we done within it. So I just want to bring it back to us as we think. We've done quite a number of things. We've had programs, especially with the with our group, study group, but now we are coming back as the trust itself. What is it that we want to do? And how are we going to be accountable for that as Africans we are trying to do something about it? So it's a question that it cannot be answered now, but it's something that we need to think through as we try to situate ourselves as a trust and say, what is it that we want to contribute? And how are we going to hold ourselves accountable this time? So that is something that is always in my mind. And thank you very much, Professor Kwame, and also King Brother Pigeon, also for the explanations, and also even the explanation that came even before. Because I joined after, I think, 20 past. I think I was a little bit late. Yeah, I want to thank you, but I'm also asking myself these questions myself. Yeah, and also what Sister Portia is saying, also the issue of commitment itself. That we say that our Africa is not coming together. Maybe we point fingers to other people, but let's also try to point fingers within ourselves to say, what is it that we are doing? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steven. It's allowed to look internally at what you can do. I think it's very important that it's coming out of it. Yes, to do a presentation, but can then the presentation be a call for some action that we can mobilize and ensure is implemented? But I know Brother Kwame will be speaking to this as he does in summary. Mr. Amma, are you in a position to speak? Sister Amma? If no, I'll go to another sister. Sister Shava, are you in a position to contribute, Sister Shava? Okay. Brother Coco, please come in if you are able to share something on this topic. Brother Coco? Am I audible, comrades? I'll call 3 people, and it seems maybe they don't hear
You're
me.
audible, brother.
No,
Brother,
we
you're
can
audible.
hear you. We can hear you.
And let me go there to the next person. Brother Ifo, are you in a position
Brother
to come?
Ifo is in a wedding. He can't speak, he said.
Okay. Okay. Elder Sam. Elder Sam, come in. I know you, before you come in, Elder Sam, out of respect, I know you sat to conferences, you listened to presentation, maybe of similar content or even more than powerful than these. But yes, I'll be asking you to come in, Elder Sam. Brother Ifo, probably I'll call you after Elder Sam, but if it's urgent, you can go in now. I want to,
Hey,
yes.
brother.
But just go ahead, then I'll come to Elder later. But therefore, please go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to be brief because like I said, I'm at a wedding. But I was wondering if there were any reflections on the student mobilization that just happened in India that has led to the resignation of a senior minister in the education department. And I'm wondering if there are lessons that we can learn from that to apply towards mobilization on the ground, especially of the youth. And interestingly enough, this was a mobilization that happened, that was started as a joke by someone who wasn't even a community organizer. So I'm just curious if anyone has reflections on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Ifo, for sharing that. Please, you can share more link on that so that we can catch up on that. You look nice on your wedding, attendance. Yeah, you keep going black.
You look gorgeous, Brother Ifo.
Thank you, Brother Ifo, for
Thank
representing
you
us.
very much. I'm just trying to represent, you know.
Ah, you look good. You look good. Thank you, Brother Ifo. Please share the link for that as well. Now, Comrade, I was talking a bit to Brother Elder Sam before he comes in. Elder Sam, you see, based on our key strategy as an organization, we look at the unification, liberation, and development. And probably this strategy then sits at the unification level. We have identified, for example, as the last call from Brother Kwame, that there's a need for a constitutional conference. And basically what you're trying to push for, because Nkrumah talked about this suggestion in 1963 address. Nkrumah says clearly what needs to be done. 60 years down the line is when Africa is implementing the so-called Africa-Free Continental Trade Agreement. Something Nkrumah talked about 63 years down the line. In fact, what we are presenting today only just try to echo what Nkrumah talked about those 60 years, 63 years down the line. Nkrumah called even for high command. Nkrumah called for a unified government, what you're pushing today, a unified constitution, unified monetary system. But as Brother Kwame is asking, is it that as we look for the AU and OAU to do what they were supposed to do then, is it that we as a people, what is our place to contribute to this? As a civil organization, what is our space to contribute to this? Because yes, we know AU is being funded by the West. We know they might not do what we want. Okay, so we sit back and wait the agenda so-called 2063 to miraculously happen. If that is not possible, what can we as a people do, especially when it comes to issues like now legal unified system we are discussing today? What can we push for? If you're calling for a unified continental constitution, Brother Stephen, Dr. Stephen has asked for this. Are there partners we can bring on board to help us actualize that conference? And can then the resolution of that conference be put into action so that we move directly to what's supposed to be, rather than just having another conference? So Elder Sam, please come in and share more wisdom on this.
Good evening, brother Pigeon. I'm not sure if I'm audible. I'm struggling with my connectivity here.
Very audible, Elder Sam, very audible.
Okay, thanks, and thanks for Brother Kwame and the presentation. In fact, all the presenters and all the inputs that have come in. I don't think I have much to say. I still want to emphasize what I said previously. I think we are undermining this effort that we are in this study group, and I believe I want to harp on that one. You know, for me as a young student, I was influenced by what we used to call the Radio Lusaka of the African National Congress, Radio Freedom, and in Tanzania we had the PAC, Voice of the PAC in Dar es Salaam. And those stations were far away from home, but because they were daily broadcasts that were directed to whatever is happening inside the country, many of the youth, not myself only, many of our youth were mobilized by those radio stations and daily productions that were made by those radio stations. And most of us, we left the country to go and join those liberation movements. So I want to say, I still say, we have brilliant presentations that we have done. If we can package them well and make them accessible to the grassroots of our people, this revolution that we are calling for, we are envisaging, will not even take years to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Elder Sam. I think you are giving us more courage to move forward, that we are in the right place. We have the right material. We need just to properly package them so that then we can hit the ground and get the work done. Thank you, Elder Sam, for that. Let me go back again and confirm from our sisters. If any of you is in a position to speak, Sister Amma or Sister Shada. If not, I'll go to then Brother Horus. Brother Horus, come in, please. Brother Horus, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Now, Brother Horus, before you speak, I'll just push it. Let me push it just a bit further, Brother Horus. Now, look at us, at our generation, the younger generation coming in. I know you are committed in Pan-Africanism a bit. We read all these things. We read the speeches by Nkrumah. We read the Africa we want. We see it's in 2063. But I know our generation has ability to make it faster. We are not in a generation that is too patient to wait for those 63 years to come or 33 years to come. Do you identify any potential within us to ensure that probably as a generation, we can help this happen as fast as possible? And what will be our role on this, Brother Horace, as you even contribute to the entire presentation that has come in? Go ahead, brother.
Okay, actually, thank you for the presentation on today over the issue of the unification and everything dealing in that context. Just to be sincere with us and the reality on the continent, I think the bigger problem about unification and the liberation of the continent is the lack of the will from within the continent. Because from the moment that the African people thought that they were nagged by the colonial powers and they thought that it was time to send out the colonial powers, then they did send them out. They did fight the wars, the liberation wars, and then they won. So over the past 60 years, it's been a state where most of the countries they were celebrating quote unquote the so-called independence, and there was no that urge. They could not see the trap they were in. But with the increase in literacy, the education, and the globalization, the more globalization is coming to the local level, to the grassroots level, then people are beginning to realize that what they experience at the local level is much more shaped by something that is global policies and everything. So we find that there is an agitation from the youths that at least something should change. But now the bigger thing is, just as you have agreed, most of these youth they don't know what should change, and then now they are as the common Nkrumah trust we come in. Like for instance, um, the senior comrade from Tanzania has just said about something the radio broadcasting during their times on the issues of the liberation in Lusaka and everything. So as a trust, we need to have a way in which let me say like a media outlet in which we will begin educating the youth and everything. Like let's start a grassroots movement. I think sometimes back there was a resolution that in every African state, at least there should be a movement that is Pan-African, if not a movement, let's say like a political party from each of the states that pushes the Pan-African idea from within the masses, so that the masses, this thing comes from the people, not from the ruling class. Because if only the ruling class will want to be the one pushing the idea, Africa would eventually turn, let me say, to like kind of some other states. Like I can use an example of Russia, whereby we find the oligarchs will be ruling. Now, for instance, the case of Africa, we call them the ruling class, the elites. They'll be the one controlling everything. But to make it more fair and more effective, we need to make it come from the people. And from that moment is where I come in, is where everyone comes in. I think it's just a call that since we are so enlightened, since we see this, then let's try and mobilize people from within our circles to ensure that this thing comes into a reality, this thing comes into a dream. It's time to get to action. It's past the talk, it's past the narratives. It's time just to do it. No time to talk, no time to have the conferences and everything. Let's set the policies, let the government see what the masses want. Let the masses demand this, let the masses demand they want to fund the AU. Let's not be sitting and waiting while you cannot fund our own organizations that are supposed to move our ideas. It's impossible. Let the governments hear that its citizens maybe are protesting. Like, for instance, I've been looking over the issues in Africa. Most of our governments are very silent on the matters that affect our neighboring countries. Like, for instance, you see, when there's a war, let me say, for example, in the Western countries, almost all the countries respond. But when there's a war in Africa, almost all the countries in Africa are silent. So you begin to wonder who is supposed to be concerned. It's also supposed to be concerned for our brothers. Now we should be finding like a people in Kenya. Let me say we are protesting over the war in Sudan, like supporting, telling the government you have to do something to our brothers who are dying, to our brothers who are fighting. But there's no that mobilization. So we need to start up the agitation. We need to start up the people so that we begin moving towards a positive trajectory. I think that's enough. Thank you.
Oh, that's the voice of the youngest voice in the room. Thank you, Brother Horus, for your contribution. I think if we could adapt this clarity in my generation, then probably the generation ahead will be more pleased that the continent is having the right path by the other generation coming up to pick this and in a different way. Brother Coco, I know you left and you came back, and I will allow you to go ahead before I go to Brother Kwame, because we're almost to the end of this. I know we started a bit late, but Brother Coco, please go ahead. Brother Ifo also confirmed to me whether it's a legacy hand or not, but let Brother Coco first of all go ahead. Brother Coco?
Apologies, I'm having technological challenges tonight. Yeah, no, thank you for this. If you recall, we did some presentations on governance as part of Farmers of Thoughts some years back, and we were exploring common law and customary law. So, as it stands, Africa is in a very complex state, because we have that common law and we have the civil law, and then we have the Roman Dutch law, the Islamic law, and of course the customary law. Hence why Dr. Nkrumah is putting that framework for us to consider how we forge all of this around what is uniquely African. But unfortunately, because of how the unity of Africa is being pushed right now, is being pushed from the neo-colonial framework, we won't be surprised if it's the Roman Dutch law or the common law at the forefront, and the customary law is being discarded or being, stripped bare, which is what we discovered was happening in Lesotho, using the Americans' money in the Millennium Challenge accounts. So the other thing that I wanted to address is Africa. The framework in which we are using is all over the place. For those that don't realize, I will try to share something in the chat at a later time. But there are continental frameworks and specialized bodies, as we already know. There is African Continental Free Trade, but apart from that, there's something called OHADA, which is the Organization for the Harmonization of Business Law in Africa. That is also at the very advanced stage now, looking at the harmonization of that business law. Now, we also know about the African Court on Human Rights, Human and People's Rights. That also is at an advanced stage. But we have the 8 regional integration, we can call them institutions: SADC, COMESA, EAC, ECOWAS, IGAT. They cover different areas of the continent. And amongst all of those regional co-op integration commissions, there are somewhat that is happening. And then there are also regional courts and mechanisms that are happening, which is the East African Court of Justice, there's the ECOWAS Court of Justice, and South African SADC Tribunal for Dispute Settlement Mechanism, and then other regional mechanisms that are happening. Then, besides that, we continue to have the different national legal systems. So, the way it stands is schizophrenic. Schizophrenic. We need order. We need something being pushed from the center. But as we already know, the African Union is being used as a scapegoat. It's being put there, and we are saying African Union is not doing the job. But the power lies with the African heads of states. So Africa has to do a lot of work, and I agree with those comrades who said we have to do something as the people, because power lies with the people. We are the principals, and our governments are just the agents, and we haven't treated them as the agents. We haven't. We have always let them do as they please, as if they are the principals. And it's time we sort of make sure that it becomes clear, because it's not clear, and the people don't know because of that, because of how the colonizer came into our land. But we need to revert back to how the governance worked in Africa. The people were in power. The ruling councils were in power, not even the chiefs. The chiefs were there just to represent the people. Everything goes back to the governance framework. Law will emerge from the people, from the governance framework. It's important to remember that. Allow me to close there. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Brother Kwame, back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yes, thank you for your contributions. There are only about 10 of us on the call today. That could be because we opened late, so that could have affected those who were coming. So once again, apologies for that. Thanks, Sister Ama, for calling me about the fact that the meeting wasn't opened. And thank you all for sharing your thinking. Dr. Piri, you see, I don't think there is any policy that is far-fetched. So maybe sometimes policies can appear far-fetched because of our understanding of our current environment. When Marcus Garvey said that, so I don't know if you all know the story of Marcus Garvey, how he was working in a printing company, and he looked around the world. Everywhere the black man was being oppressed, and so he resigned or took some kind of leave, remember which one, traveled around the world with his own money, then made a decision to change the world, set up the UNIA. And when he was talking about the liberation of African countries, because remember, at the time, the entire world map had no African country on it. When you looked on the map of the world, you see neo-colonial territories. The only independent states were, at the time, were later, as you know, Morocco, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, Liberia, South Africa, to put it that way, Ethiopia. And then when Nkrumah was fighting for unification, Egypt was one of them as well. So when you look on the map, there were a lot of African countries that in fact, there was no African countries existing. People told Garvey that his policies or what he wanted was out of this world. They say it was far-fetched. They say it was far-fetched. That the idea that there will be the map of the world will change, we have African countries on world maps. That he was crazy. It wouldn't happen. But it did happen whilst he was alive. So let's not think that there are policies that are so far-fetched that sometimes going for the obvious is not always the solution. Anyway, then in terms of us, let's remember that we have both policy, we have both practice and thought. Let's not think that because we are engaged in practice, we have to stop talking, we have to stop discussing, we have to stop the conferences, we have to stop the thinking. Yeah, the thinking is okay if it goes along with practice. The problem is when the practice is disengaged from the thinking. Am I making sense? So our position should be that we marry the practice with the thinking, or marry the thinking with the practice. So that's the second thing I wanted to say. The third point is that you could argue that the purpose of our Saturday sessions is really for us to discuss unification from these different angles, to create greater consciousness. Yeah, because some of the things that we are discussing here is not being discussed anyway. Nobody's discussing them. So the idea is that just by us discussing them, we will be contributing to creating that consciousness that is needed. So I would encourage us all not to think that or feel that what we are doing is irrelevant or will not change anything, or that it will not affect anything, etc., etc. I think what Brother Sam said, when he spoke, which is that, that we must find a way to package what we are discussing here. Yeah, and we are asking for those of us who have IT skills to help us break these down into maybe 1 minute chunks of TikTok videos. So we can also just flood the internet with unification messages. That is what we need, or one of the things we need anyway. I think I'll end there because of time. Thanks.
Thank you, Brother Kwame. Your last point bringing us to it. You see, Elder Sam got inspired by the news he could hear a distance from South Africa in Tanzania. And eventually they moved to action. On records, our video are watched by many people. Probably don't know how many people have been inspired to do some action, even just to come and join us, you see. And as you say, yes, we must make the thinking and action go together. And as you say, when the action misses the thinking, we go wrong. So I think, guided by this, we need to keep the conversation moving. We have deliberately said we need a constitutional conference. People who have the ability to help us actualize this can go ahead and do that, and we work together to ensure that works out. We are preparing other programs that come along. So please, let's keep the conversation going, and let's do what we can. I'm planning, of course, talking with my few young men recently on how we can go on a TikTok fully, as you're saying, Brother Kwame. We remember we have a TikTok account for the CSD. So we'll try to do what we can do in the space of Brother Horus, and other people will come along so that we can have the conversation reaching the younger generation, and probably they'll get inspired as well to join the struggle. So thank you very much, everyone, for those who attended this session today. Brother Kwame, please, I think if you are able to get the schedule for next week, please, let's get that schedule. As we say, of course, Brother Kwame, remember, some years back were very few. Today, if we don't get past 10, we say we are very few, which means we have actually grown. We move beyond what we were, and the message is moving on. And to us, that's a good way on how we move forward. So please join us when you can contribute to this conversation. The good thing that we keep this record on our YouTube channel. I think the recording that is missing on our YouTube channel is this week's recording that I will upload by probably tomorrow in the morning. I'll be able to upload this week's recording. so that we get all the recording. But the other week's recording are already available on our YouTube channel. Then, as Brother Kwame has highlighted, the next Saturday we are talking about continental market and value chains. Here is a big thing on economy. When we say that we had maybe political unification or liberation or independence, the economic element is still tied. So how do we use the market and the value chains in the continent to create an economy that can develop Africa? So this is the conversation we are looking forward to. Let's identify the value chains. Let's identify the market. Let's see how we can unify them from the continental approach in order to attain that economy that can support the African people. Then the other Saturday, we'll be looking at the development in terms of integration, transport, and energy systems. Then we'll be going to liberation, anti-imperialist alliances. If you know any anti-imperialist alliances that are existing, that existed before, let's have that conversation on how we can build the modern anti-imperialist alliances as we move along. Then the capital cities, symbols, and statehood. That's what we'll be looking at in this month of Mosiah. So happy Mosiah month to all of you comrades who are with us today. On Monday, we proceed with the Pan-African Reading Club. On Thursday, back to Consciousness Study Group, where we still study the philosophy, the center of our conversation. So thank you very much all for what you have put forward today. And thank you for your time. And we'll keep going as usual. Brother, coming back to you.
No, that's it. Just on behalf of everyone, thank you all for coming. We appreciate you. The ancestors appreciate you. The people appreciate you for all that you do for them on their behalf. So thank you all for coming. Have a wonderful week and see you soon.
Thank